still got market. If not market.
All right, guys. Hey, we're getting started. Got Mortgages podcast here with Santi Rodriguez, aka Funds and Flips. I'm here with my brother Stuart Daniels, aka Stu. Stuart, welcome. Tell me a little about what's going on in your world. Tell people who you are.
And well, thank you for having me first and foremost, Santi. I appreciate it. My name is Stu Daniels. You can find me at sellwithstu.com. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell me, sellwithstu.com. What is sell with Stu? Tell me what that is.
Well, it's very simple. The experience with selling with Stu is seamless and easy.
Okay.
What I present is a very simple marketing game plan on how to get your property sold when listing with me.
Okay.
And the great thing about it is that I provide steps every step of the way.
Okay.
And my main clientele is institutional clients,
Okay.
small businesses,
Okay.
institutions that need to sell.
Got you.
And, we do handle a large portfolio for selling. So I'm able to handle a large portfolio if you need to liquidate.
Okay.
But if you're a traditional mom and pop, I'm here for you too.
Got it. So it sounds like you do a lot of the hand holding, taking them from start to finish on anything that they could possibly need. When it comes to an institution, I'm sure it's a lot different than dealing with an individual, right? So walk me through that process.
So dealing with an institution, their goals are very clear, right?
Okay.
They generally have bottom lines of what they need and what they're looking for. And they have protocols on how they want to liquidate their properties. Dealing with a traditional seller, a lot of things are contingent on their timelines. Like, for instance, listen, if I sell this, where am I going? How can you help me with that?
Okay.
Transitioning from one house to the other, making sure that the closing meets the same timeline so that they don't have to move to different places.
Absolutely.
So those are the key differences where handheld is definitely needed for those type of sellers, but then with the institutional clients, follow the protocol and get it done.
Got it. So with the institutional, it sounds like that's your bread and butter.
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
How does that formulate, like, who would be the prime person for you to do business? If I said, Stu, I want to refer you business, who is that client?
It's the investor.
Okay.
It's the investor that's looking to sell their properties, whether it's already renovated to go to market, or perhaps they have a property where they did a little to nothing, but they need to go ahead and expose it to the market so that maybe another investor can pick it up.
And are you selling a lot of these to other investors, since you're dealing with investors themselves? Are your buyers investors as well?
100%. 100%. It's being able to market to the investors, understanding what their bottom lines are, and make sure that that spread is there, so that it makes sense for we will call it the end investor to purchase.
Got it. I love it. That is a niche upon itself, and I think there aren't a lot of agents who specialize in getting properties from investors to then sell to a new investor, so knowing the numbers is key. Right. And putting together performers and showing what the taxes and insurance are.
Right. Being able to illustrate their basis, right? Yeah. Like how much did they acquire the property for? Carrying cost, renovations, all right. If we were to sell, including your commission, what's my net? The bottom line numbers are really important to the investors. And because look, let's face it, investors, sometimes they come in and they're using money from other investors that are investing it with them.
Yeah.
So, they have, I guess you can call it to their share, to what you would say your shareholders, right? They have a responsibility to their shareholders or the people that's investing in what they're doing. So providing, accurate BPOs, very conservative on my numbers.
Okay.
And being able to say, hey, listen, this is where we are, and this is what I'm projecting us to be. always, under promise and over deliver.
Absolutely. And that's the motto that everybody in business should be with. And as we're looking at, 2026 here, like, how do you feel about the business? Is this now a good time for an investor to get in the marketplace?
Well, Santi, it's always a good time for an investor to get in the marketplace.
I totally agree with you with that. Like, I'm waiting for you to send me some deals, actually, because I would like some of those deals that have the good money.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, look, when I first started in the business, I started out in 2008, the housing crisis, right? And it was like, you ever go to a party, and like everyone's leaving and you're just getting there?
Oh, yeah, that's the word, the FMO, fear of missing out.
Missing out. So that's what it was for me. So I had to really hone my skills, going in, doing a lot of short sales, and understanding how to put a short sale packet together, like doing it everything from the bells and whistles of talking with the lender on the other side, making sure that they got everything they needed in order to approve a short sale.
Let's stop for a second.
Yeah.
You hit on something, right? Because
I
heard specialist with investor, but now I hear specialist with short sales, which is a whole different animal. So let's tell the listeners, what is a short sale? Because everyone doesn't know what a short sale is.
A short sale is when you have a property and you owe more money on the property than what it's worth.
Got it.
And what you're looking to do is negotiate with the lender to accept less than what you can sell it for.
And you handle all of that for the investor.
Well, we handle all of that for the homeowner.
For the homeowner, yes.
And then for the homeowner who's in that situation that needs to sell,
right?
Then we bring them in to say, hey, look, we have somebody that's willing to purchase this property short of what you owe,
right?
And even negotiate with the lender for relocation assistance to help them out on their move.
So I didn't mean to cut you off. So let's go back to it's a great time to buy right now.
Right.
And you started out in 2008 when,
right. So the short sale business was something that I started with.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
And through that business, it allowed me to get really good contacts with lenders.
Okay.
And kind of build a resume.
Okay.
A few years later, through these contacts, I was able to land a Fannie Mae contract being an REO listing agent.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
A lot of agents out there, I'm sure, would love to have that opportunity, but you honed your skills in working with the short sales, selling to investors and doing your due diligence. It sounds like learning what those investors wanted, what these banks wanted.
Exactly that, right? So being able to, from the short sales, we developed the skill of following protocol, right? Like what do you need? When do you need it by, right? What exactly are you looking for? Very similar to how it transitioned into REOs where, they have a process on how they want their property sold, who can buy it, at which time, right? So, a lot of our REO properties with Fannie Mae, they have what's called the first look, right? For the first 30 days, right? It's open to homeowner occupants only,
right?
So that is just an example of how they want their property sold. When I mean they, I'm talking about a lender.
Okay, cool.
So, that process allowed me to get into the REO sales, but then it allowed me to transition into just being an overall agent, understanding a lot of the difficulties that some of these properties present.
Okay.
Because being on the Fannie Mae side, we were exposed to everything. I mean, dealing with below ground oil tanks that are leaking.
Wow.
Septic system, huge headache. Right. Dealing with septic systems that have outlived their lifespan, and major expenses that, look, if we was to put this house on the market, no buyer would want to deal with it and pay your price.
Right.
So the idea was that, look, I'm gathering all of this expertise and knowledge, right?
Yeah. From
being an REO listing agent and just pretty much utilizing the bank's funds to get these property to market, and in return, I'm getting the experience. So it worked out to be a mutual benefit there.
That's awesome. Amazing stuff. So Talked a little about short sales. We talked about you dealing a lot with institutions and investors.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see this market right now in 2026?
So right now, what I'm seeing right now is that uh, housing is still in demand.
Okay,
Right.
totally agree with you.
Housing is still in demand. Regardless what you're hearing out there, people still need places to live. Um, but it's very competitive. So right now, based off of my production,
Right.
I've sold over 42 homes in the last year to date.
Whoa, 42 homes, people. Let's make sure we mark that. So 42 homes year to date.
That's
Let's
right.
go.
That's right. Yeah, you're right.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Of which 10% of that was only Fannie Mae, by the way.
Okay, that's great. So we had about 4 or 5 from Fannie Mae.
Right, with 4
Yeah.
or 5 from Fannie Mae. So, that comes to tell you that, listen, there's still a demand. It's really on pricing.
Right.
And that's where I see the market going. It's still a seller's market, you
Okay.
know. Listen, we're not getting the multiple offers like we did in years past,
Yeah.
especially post-pandemic,
Right.
but they are selling,
Right.
and they're not sitting for long.
Right. And let's touch on, you said seller's market. Tell the people what the seller's market is. Because, I don't think some new home buyers understand what the seller's market is.
All right. Well, the seller's market is basically when you have a market in place where the demand is outweighing the supply,
Okay.
right? So, look, in certain price ranges, the demand will always be higher than what's currently available. So let's just take, for instance, where we are in New Jersey. Median home sales is between 500 and 600,000. There's a lot of buyers in that price range.
Correct.
A lot of buyers. So when a home is listed, a single family, let's say 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, within that price range, for every one property, you're going to have 10 qualified buyers to buy that property.
Absolutely.
You
I totally agree with you. And on that seller's market, like when I'm on the finance side. So when I talk to you or talk with the other agents, I'm like, the buyers have to know that they can't go in and negotiate seller's concessions. They can't go in and think they could get in with the minimum down because there's a lot of competition, right? They got to make sure we get them the best part of the financing to offer the best offer in a seller's market.
That's 100% correct, Santi. The idea is that, listen, it's like you want to dress up and look good for your future wife,
Right.
right?
I like that analogy.
Right. Look good,
Right.
put on your best.
Yeah.
When you sign on that dotted line and you're under contract and you guys are married,
Right.
then you can let your hair down.
Right. Right.
You ask for the things that you probably wouldn't have been able to ask for prior to.
Right.
A keen example is like, a lot of our low down payment buyers, they need assistance,
Right.
concessions. So
Yes.
what we've been doing is, look, let's get in the contract.
Mm-hmm.
Let's negotiate the inspections.
Okay.
Once those inspections have been negotiated, whether they've been handled with a credit from the seller or, perhaps repairs, we can then ask for that additional money specifically to what that buyer needs.
Love it. Love it.
Right?
Yeah.
To increase the purchase price before we have the appraiser come out.
Wow. That that's awesome. And that works hand in hand to help the first time home buyer
100%.
who needs that extra money for whether it's closing cost or whatever it may be. So that's a key thing. Going to the real estate right now, right? We hit on a few things. Talk about the off markets. I hear you do some off markets sometimes.
We do. So, and I have to be honest with you, the off markets are great,
Okay.
right? But it's great for the buyers that are savvy enough to know what they're buying.
Okay.
Off markets, generally, there's a reason why they are off market.
Okay.
Right.
Absolutely.
I listen, for a lot of our viewers, when you buy a property off market, you're getting it for less than what it would be if it was on market, because
Absolutely.
we're not exposing it to the market, right? If the market knew about it, well, just like we gave that example, instead of having one buyer for that one house, we have 5, which
Right.
then increases the value of the home. So, we're when we get these off market properties, a lot of times they do need work and they may not be finance ready in their current condition.
Yeah.
So those generally lead to more the investor buyers when we get them off market. But listen, there are times that, I'll get a phone call from one of my advertisements or just a sign that I've sold the property across the street and the homeowner may be dealing with some municipal issues, right?
Got it.
That say, hey, Stu, I'm not really ready to list, but look, if you have a buyer, introduce it.
Yeah.
And that's how we're getting a lot of our leads.
And it's amazing. Me being a person I am, and I flip, flip homes. I finance the homes. I'm always looking for those off market. So that's a key. And I'm sure you built that buyers list of other investors like myself that are looking for those type of properties. So that's huge because a lot of agents don't specialize in off market deals, right? So there's a couple of specialist things that you do that you specialize in, right? So we talked a little about the marketplace in 2026, and it's a great time to buy still based on this market. Tell me something that was like the craziest thing you've seen since 2008 to now. Just give me something crazy.
Well, it's funny you say that. I mean, this just speaks to the demand, right? I mean, look, I got a 1-bedroom.
Okay.
For sale.
Got it.
It's a single family home.
Single family, 1-bedroom, single family?
1-bedroom, single family
That's
home.
crazy alone right there. A
one bedroom,
single family?
Single family home.
I've been doing this 20 years plus. I don't think I've seen a 1-bedroom, single family home.
Very unique, right? Listed the properties under $100,000. How many buyers do we have under $100,000?
I would say thousands.
People who are not even pre-approved don't even realize they can afford that place.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
So listing this property, you bring it to market. I mean, you would think, all right, well, we're probably going to get multiple offers.
Right.
50 offers on this property. 50, wow. Right? I can't disclose.
First day?
No, we're talking about 3 days. I had to allow it to season.
Okay.
We certainly could have did it on the first day, but we allowed it to season, right?
Yeah.
So I can't disclose the price that it went for, but it certainly went significantly higher.
Absolutely. I could only imagine.
Right?
Yeah.
Which,
wow.
So that's the craziest thing that I've seen right now is that even in this high interest rate market, we're still getting so much demand.
That is insane. A 1-bedroom.
A 1-bedroom.
I mean, just the fact you said 100,000, you listed that, right? I'm trying to think, is there, unless you're in certain parts of New Jersey, you could get something for 100,000, but anywhere from Ocean County all the way up to Burke, it's tough to get something.
It's tough to get, right? Yeah. Exactly. I mean, even co-ops right now are, $100,000 is still a dream.
I love that story, man. Yeah. Like that's something cool. So I always like to hear, something crazy. Everybody comes up with something different, and that hit right on the dime. So what's the game plan for Stu in 2026? What are you looking to do? How can the audience help you grow, and how can they reach out to you and stuff?
So, well, what I want to be is I want to be more of a facilitator to that, that young savvy investor that's looking to build their portfolio.
Okay.
I have a pleasure of working with a young buyer now.
Okay.
Reminds me of my son,
nice.
20 years old, great job, and look, he's looking to buy his first multifamily property with the mindset that, hey, I'm going to be here for 2 years.
Right.
And then I'm going to transition to buy my next property, right? No family yet.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a perfect. So that is who I want to be for that investor, right? Is how can I get you into a property like that? How can I build you up? So when you get to, in your early 30s and 40s, you've already have an amassed a real estate portfolio that can support you.
Wow. And that's huge mentorship. That's taking people under your wing, teaching them the important things, right? That they need to know so they can buy smart, right? So they don't make the mistakes that others would do, because Stu's been doing this for a while. I'm going to show you the things that you need to do. Yeah, that's huge, and I love that, and definitely something for the audience to look forward to is, we're going to be doing you know, an investment seminar together. No release date yet, right?
All right,
But that's where we can bring in some of those key components.
100%.
Right?
Right. Anybody can be, listen, when we speak investors, like sometimes it was like, oh, well, investor, you have to have this level of experience. No, I mean, listen, you buy a property and you decide to move out and become a landlord, guess what your name is?
Right.
Investor.
Love
you know,
it.
so anybody can be an investor, and it shouldn't be gate kept.
No.
You know, you can start in this business. And, you know, even with buying a 1-bedroom that you perhaps you want to live in
Right.
for a year or two until you're able to grow and become a landlord to that 1-bedroom.
I mean, if going back to that story, I'm just like a 1-bedroom
A
single
1-bedroom single family.
All I'm thinking about, me as a developer, I'm like, oh God, listen, I'm ripping the roof, I'm adding square footage. It's $100,000. Like literally, we buy land for more than 100,000.
That is
just
correct.
the land alone. So that's a huge piece right there for me. So as we're sitting here and we're talking about what's something that you would tell the investors, right, they should do when they're getting ready to buy, whether it's you they're coming to or someone else. What's one of those key things that they need to know as an investor buyer? Let's talk about investor buyer.
Okay.
And what's a key thing for a homeowner that's looking to buy?
So from an investor standpoint, I think the first thing that they need to do is look at their financials. I think that's pretty clear. Kind of get an understanding of what your
that means they got to call me first, right?
Oh, they certainly need to. They certainly need to seek to you,
love it,
right? Figure out which loan product is going to work for them.
Yeah.
Because, listen, you don't want to show up to a gunfight trying to find your bullets.
Right.
Absolutely. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you want to make sure that, hey, how am I going to attack this deal if it's presented to me, and where am I going to get the funding from?
Absolutely.
I think that's number one. You know, funny enough, for your homeowner occupant, it should be the same thing.
Got it.
Right. Kind of understanding, you know, where you are financially, you know, what can you afford? If you're currently renting, are you prepared to pay more?
Right.
Or are you looking to pay less? You know, those, I believe that's where it starts. That's where the genesis should be when you're going out there, you know, looking to explore, to get into this real estate market.
And I love you said that, because a lot of people, they start and they go to you first, and they want to see property.
Oh, 100%.
And don't know what they can afford, don't know how they're going to get the loan or anything. So I like that advice for anybody looking to buy, whether it's an investor, whether it's somebody looking to buy for their first home. Another thing you talked about was, you know, you're working with a client now, and I try to, you know, and you said something key too. You like working with the younger guys who are looking to be investors, because they could build up over the next course of the next, you know, 10 years or so. And that's where I'm at in the business, is everything is about teaching, educating when
100%.
it comes to real estate finance. Like, you don't know what you don't know, right? So you have to ask the professionals out here who have done it, who have the expertise in getting it done. So in teaching and educating, besides doing the seminars, where else do you see yourself going? Like,
yeah, outside of that, like I think the growth, growing our young, right, our young investors, and you know, we talked about institutional clients, right? I think a lot of smaller investors that have done a few deals, I think a missing component with a lot of them that I'm seeing,
right,
not the ones that have super experienced, but you know, the investor that's maybe have done maybe 4 or 5 deals so far, and they're still kind of warm themselves up. You know, dealing with a broker that kind of understands what you're looking for and how you're looking to build, as opposed to dealing with a lot of agents.
right,
You know, I think that's where, you know, when you say, what are you looking for in 2026?
right,
Like, that's what I would like to provide, you know, through this podcast, through social media, explaining to these investors that, hey, listen, it might make sense for you
right,
to deal with one person that understands your business dynamic,
right,
and that can execute what you're looking to do.
Yeah.
Right. Because look, 4 or 5 deals, you can be hands-on.
right,
But where you're trying to go, 20, 25 deals, 30 deals, 50 deals a year, it's going to be hard for you to have that.
Yeah.
So if you have one broker that can manage other agents under him so that you can get your goals met, that's somebody or something that you should be looking into.
Good.
You know, and I'm certainly that agent that can help.
Awesome, awesome. And let's talk about real estate goals. Let's talk about Stu, and we talked a little bit about doing some projects together.
Right.
You know, I've been doing it for a long time, and definitely want to get in there. You know, you don't have to swing a hammer or anything, of course. But tell me some of your real estate goals for this year.
So my real estate goals for this year. It's funny you say that. We have to get another multifamily.
Okay.
We have to get another multifamily.
Okay.
So
Need that rental income. That
you
passive
need that
income,
rental
guys.
income,
Yeah.
but you also need that bonus depreciation.
Good.
Yeah. So
Let's touch on that bonus depreciation, because a lot of people won't understand because they're not investors currently, right?
right.
The bonus depreciation, hit on that for a second.
Oh, so listen, if you're a salaried employee,
Yeah.
right, and you have a good income,
Yeah.
right, you know, you pay out a lot of money in taxes. It comes right out of your check,
Absolutely.
you know. The way that our tax code is set up,
Mm-hmm.
it benefits investors right now. Um, the bonus depreciation allows you to accelerate your depreciation so that you can lessen your tax obligation. So you can get a little bit more money on that tax return than you really think.
It's a huge thing that people need to understand that's out there. And it depends on everybody's situation is different. Of course, we're not licensed accountants or CPAs,
Correct.
so you want to talk to your accountant or CPA, but this is definitely a way you can pay less in taxes.
You could pay less in taxes. I mean, certainly, you know, you want to consult your professional, but
Yeah, yeah.
you know, there are case studies where, look, you have this surplus of income. You know the IRS is coming.
Yeah.
Listen, you own real estate. Accelerated depreciation is one avenue.
Totally love it. It's one of the most important things, and real estate works in different avenues. You have the income, you have the depreciation. You know, you learn from having real estate. It's a business. You know,
It's
I
a
tell a lot of
business.
people, it's a business. It's not just a house. Treat it like a business. I tell even people who are buying a home, this is a business, right? Because you're going to gain equity over the next couple of years,
Years,
and depending on
100%.
where they're at in life, whether they have kids, and you know, or where their kids going to college, this is ways to get your money for college, to pay off debt, to go on trips, and just utilizing the equity in your property. And this is, you know, something we definitely teach. Stu, before we wrap up here today, how do people contact you?
Oh, you can reach me directly, sellwithstu.com. Stu sells homes on Instagram. You simply listen, I'm available. You can reach me on the internet. You can call me 732-496-0985.
0985, guys.
0985. Call me up. I'm ready to talk, and let me hear your goals.
Listen, I really loved having you on today. A lot of inspiration that you're going to give out to the listeners. Inspired me just to look at what I have right now, get some more rentals. That's a huge thing for me right now. More doors is key. I love the development, bringing the house together. It was great having you on today.
Thanks
and
for
can't
having
wait
me,
to the
Santi.
next
I
one.
appreciate it. Absolutely.
Perfect.